Wow, I forgot about that.
Pickles and vodka, unearthing more childhood trauma.
God, I want to cut it out, but I won't. Hey y'all, Christina here. Just a quick note before we start the show. Lauren and I tried something different this week. We tried to record video. Unfortunately, it soon became apparent that we were in over our heads, and there's a lot that I personally need to teach myself before I feel like we can start releasing videos. So in the episode, we make reference to being on video and releasing the video, but it's not going to happen this time. And that's okay. It's good to try new things, even if you quote-unquote fail. We had a lot of fun, and I hope you have fun listening to this episode. Another thing I wanted to mention is that we shared some listener feedback on this episode. One person did reach out afterwards to say they'd prefer their name not be read, and so I've bleeped that name. This goes for anyone who sends us anything. If you don't want your name to be on the show, it's totally okay to be anonymous. Just let us know. I can also go back and bleep it if you heard your name on the show and you don't want to. We want to make sure that y'all feel safe. All right, I'll stop talking now. Here's the show. I was just asking Lauren a question about frame rates, and then I was like, wait, I went to school for this.
That'd be like me asking Christina if she could show me an aerial move.
I thought you were going to do something numbers related.
Yeah, that too.
Like,
I don't know how good you are at numbers. I just know that's usually my
terrible
job. Okay.
That actually has a lot to do with like childhood trauma. I have a lot of childhood trauma around math and science, which we'll get into. I was homeschooled.
To be fair, I have some childhood trauma around math, even though I'm good at it.
That makes me feel so much better. That makes me feel seen. Oh, you have a tagline, right?
I do. Except I always forget how to start it when I have to do it the opposite way.
Just make sure to say
hello.
You always forget to say mental health podcast.
Okay.
We need to specify because people just have crazy expectations, you know?
Right. We could be a podcast about how to make pancakes.
I almost made pancakes today. Anyway.
Yum. Okay. Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
And welcome to Pickles and Vodka, a mental health podcast where we don't mind if occasionally you want to act like a child.
I'm
Lawrence.
Say that again. You were doing so good.
From the start?
No, I mean... Need to focus.
You'll find out why we're acting ridiculous in just a moment.
I mean, I might be stoned a little bit.
Well, I'm sure I am.
Oopsies. Yeah, we have stuff to get to. So let's just do it over again, the whole thing.
Okay. Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
And welcome to Pickles and Vodka, a mental health podcast where we don't mind if sometimes you want to act like a child.
In fact, we encourage it.
I'm one of your co-hosts, Lauren.
And I'm your other co-host, Christina.
And I feel ridiculous.
You feel ridiculous?
Yes.
Why do you feel ridiculous?
Well, it might be because I'm on a podcast that is attempting to record a video.
I don't know where to look right now.
Oh yeah, I
it's
probably
so
should be looking at the camera I'm recording on more. Count the what?
Our heads tilted at the same exact time, like, what?
Check the countdown. What second does my vape first appear? It's now.
Well, also, I forgot we should have done the clap thing so we could get our sound synchronized. I mean, I can still do it without that because I went to school for this.
That's true.
Actually, audio production was my least favorite class.
Oh,
I don't know if I've talked about that before. I hated it.
I didn't realize that.
Anyway, we're recording video because it's something I've been wanting to do for a while because I feel like it's fun and it's just something I personally want to practice doing more.
That's fair.
I'm a little distracted because I have a lot of acne right now. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, it doesn't matter.
You had no idea until just now.
You didn't react to my flamingo typo.
Oh, I thought I gave you an exclamation point on that because I didn't have enough time to say all of my thoughts, which are that from now on, I am going to call any sort of pimple or anything flamingo acne.
Code word flamingo. So what happened was less than a half hour ago, I want to say, I texted Lauren and I was like, hey, do you want to try doing video this time just as a test? and maybe we can offer it to paid subscribers. And also, I just need practice editing more video. And then you were like, yeah, cool. And then I said something about like, I have flaming acne, but my phone corrected it to flamingo acne.
Flamingo acne.
And flamingo was all in caps, I want to say. Maybe not. I'm feeling very insecure.
Yeah, I kind of
a little
feel
vulnerable
like too. Although I do like.
What does your shirt say?
That's what I was just going to talk about.
Oh, really?
Good timing.
Very professional.
Well, I don't look like the fact I told Christina. It's a little bit cropped, so I'm sort of self-conscious there, but I wanted to wear it. I got it the last time I was going to be in a band because I thought it'd be fun to wear to shows because it says 1-800-DON'T-CALL-HIM.
1-800-DON'T-CALL-HIM. I fucking love it. Don't call him.
Exactly.
Listener.
Don't.
Or
them.
If
you think that you want to, don't.
But mostly him.
Yeah. If you shouldn't be calling them, it's probably a him.
I've been reading all my old journals from when I was a Christian, and I reference God as him, capital H.
I saw that on the screenshot you posted, and I was like, oh, what a Christian upbringing, girl.
It's insane. We'll talk about it later. Right now we're talking about being on video, which I feel like I'll either post like this one for free if we do decide to share the video. If not, I'll edit this out and no one will be the wiser. But if we do share it, I feel like we should share one for free, especially if it's a pickle poll, because it's like we're literally getting content from other people. They deserve to like see it. And then that can be like a teaser, and like after, if people like it, then they can sign up to become a paid subscriber and get every episode as a video.
Yeah, if this is just so amazing, you can't live without it.
If you want to see my flamingo acne. Actually, I shouldn't be leading with that.
This would make it, though, more rewarding, I guess, if I do poll the listeners for what color I should do my hair next.
Wait, my opinion doesn't matter?
Of course it does.
I'm just kidding. I voted for the emerald. No, wait, it was eggplant.
No, you said emerald or eggplant, and I'm thinking of doing streaks of both.
Yes. Love it. You should. I forgot what I was going to say. Any other housekeeping?
Kind of. Just in that this is something I forgot to mention on our For the Love of Nancy episode.
Oh.
And
what?
I mean, it's just a silly thing, but I really, really wanted to, is especially because I've just moved here and, you know, when I had to take notes on the movie, I'm just like grasping at whatever I can find. So what I found is a treatment plan from my second stay in a treatment center. And I just scribbled my notes on the back of my treatment plan.
I thought you were about to like share your treatment plan.
Oh my God, no, that's why I was quick. I was like,
okay, that's why I was like, what is happening? But
no.
That's even better that you happen to grab your treatment plan to write your notes for the love of Nancy.
I was just like, yeah, I need something. And I was like, oh, the back of these pages are blank. And I was like, well, isn't that irony?
It's poetic justice.
I will say one thing, though, since, you know, this is from 2017, I haven't...
Wait, listener, if you haven't heard that episode, we reviewed a Lifetime movie from the 90s about a girl who goes to treatment for her eating disorder. That's why this is funny.
Yes.
Is it funny if you have to explain the joke?
Well, no, but hopefully most people listened, so they already laughed, and then they're like, whatever, they're explaining it.
I don't want to assume that people listen to us.
But I just wanted to say this, you know, so then, of course, I had to look through it. It's from August 2016, and I love that they mention what medications you're on, what your privileges are, and things like that. And then, instead of, like, a diagnosis... they call it your problem list.
Wait. We've talked about this before privately, not on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I have a similar list in my chart, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's hilarious. They tell it like it is.
This is your problem list.
We got
You got problems, girl. Look at all of them.
Are we going to say everything together again?
Maybe that's what happens when we both get a little stoned.
I mean, whatever. I don't want to talk about drugs too much on this episode.
No, but I would gladly explain why I felt the need to this afternoon.
Yes, Lauren, where are you at? Before we launch into the lovely listener feedback from our episode on hurried child syndrome, how's your week been?
Let me tell you about my Friday.
Oh, God. Should I, get a blanket or something?
Maybe.
Oh,
This might give you an anxiety attack when you first hear, what I found.
Okay, I'm going to paint my nails.
So I have been talking about, kind of the extra responsibilities at work and how that's been, kind of stressful, but kind of getting through it. I wake up this morning because I work from home on Fridays and log in, and the first email that I see is a coworker saying, hey, not a big deal if it's just a little late or anything, but didn't we get paid this week?
Are you in charge of payroll?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
So what happened is because the one person is gone, we have our other kind of contractor accounting person that we said, because me and the person gone used to do every other payroll. So we've got this new person that we said, we'll teach her because two people should always be able to do it. So when we were supposed to process it early this week, Wednesday, she's done it a couple times and she's like, I'm not totally comfortable. Can we run through it together? We shared our screens, we did it and everything. What I find out is at the end, when she's like, okay, I've got this, what she forgot to do is the very last thing where you hit the button that says process this payroll.
No. So no one got paid because she missed that part of the training, I guess, or
Yeah.
Oh my God. So how long did it take before you figured out what happened?
8:15 in the morning. Like I said, it was the first thing I saw. Someone's like, why didn't I get my paycheck?
Oh, as they should. I mean,
well, yeah.
You didn't get your paycheck.
And honestly, I'm glad they did, because the very first thing I did is call our payroll vendor and be like, I'm fucked. Here's what happened. And they were like, it's a really good thing you called first thing, because we probably have time. Your company can directly wire us the money. We can override and process it, and they will get it by the end of today, which happened because I checked mine and it's there.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So how did that make you feel?
Like I wanted to crawl in a hole and die.
How did you cope with that?
Honestly, I think that's one of those things that just kicked me into go mode.
Because crisis management. It feels natural to us to be in crisis. I was just reading about this in a memoir this week. I was up all night reading it. It's called The Art of Losing It.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
By Rosemary Keevil. It's really good. But, yeah, what was I just saying?
Oh, we were just talking about, the aftermath of all that.
Crisis. You were in a crisis and you were just go, go, go.
Realizing I didn't want to be a bitch and throw her under the bus, especially because if I'm helping train, I probably should have followed through to the very end. So it's both of us. But, I immediately called the other girl that was doing it. And she's a contractor, so of course it doesn't affect when she gets paid, but
yeah.
But luckily she has a strong sense of loyalty, I feel like. So she was also like, oh, fuck. And we, did everything we had to do as fast as we could and got it taken care of. And that still probably took a good hour and a half, 2 hours in the first thing in the morning. And, once it was all good to go, then that's what she messaged me and said something. She's just like, okay, she's like, we've got it. You can breathe now. And my response is I was just like, I'm at that point where I've just been running on all of my potential adrenaline for 2 hours. I'm like, I feel like I can't even walk yet.
Did you eat breakfast? Lauren called out.
I usually don't when I work from home because I don't think
you were working from home. Okay, that's fine. I mean,
okay.
Sometimes I have breakfast at 10. It's fine.
Exactly. So I was like, if you count breakfast, I think I got it at 11:45. Still the morning.
But yeah, exactly. I worked my first weekend at the Organic Food Depot this week, and someone walked in at 4:30, and I was like, "Good morning." Anyway, continue with your morning from hell.
I mean, that was basically it. I was just thinking oh, good, this is a good segue into where you at.
Now I feel bad for potentially cutting you off. We didn't talk about your feelings much.
I mean, we did, and that I felt like I had all of them at once, and then I felt like I just wanted to melt into the floor. It was just one thing, but it's literally the worst thing. I mean, people not getting paid. I feel like that's the number one job you have to do when you take care of your company's finances.
I guess I got the vibe that you were really stressed out and panicky or needed to vent. And then afterwards I was like, oh, wait, you want to wind down. That's like the opposite. But
yeah, I was like, God, I need some fun after that. I have felt stressed to the top of whatever.
Well, today will be fun because we got a lot of listener feedback. But yeah, where I'm at, I started my job. It's really chill. I get to work surrounded by fancy vegan food, which I haven't like bought anything yet because it's just like the choices are overwhelming. Actually, we should have put this in housekeeping. But, and I don't know if you and I have talked about this yet, Lauren, but we are putting the support group on hold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Orion, who is a friend of the podcast, he and I started this online support group back in April or something like that.
Sounds
and we've been doing it every Saturday, and we've had like some regulars, and it's been really great. But yeah, I'll be working every weekend now. And I'm already like, you know, this podcast is a lot of work, and I'm trying to get more serious about my writing. And so I just told Orion last night, I was like, it's kind of giving me more stress whenever I think about it. And so I'm trying to honor that feeling and just like put it on the back burner for a little bit, which is sad. If there's any changes, like if we're going to keep doing it at any point, we'll announce it here in the podcast or on Instagram. But like, okay, the biggest thing for me this week actually happened yesterday. I don't even know why, but I started reading my 2009 journals. And I've talked about it before on the podcast. Like, this is something I do every few years. I'll just read through them. But this time, like, it hit different. We've talked about this last week, kind of feeling like you were an adult, like you were expected to act like a mini adult. Yeah. And I feel like my whole life I've been treated kind of as an adult. I've treated myself like an adult. I've always had all these responsibilities. And so even like there's a journal entry I wrote when I was 17, and I was like, I'm being so juvenile. And so stupid and childish. And I'm like, dude, you were a fucking child.
Because, yeah, you still were. That's why.
We will talk about this later, but I had a lot of really significant barriers, and I was putting all the blame on myself. And so just like reading these now at 32, I feel like as a real adult now, I realize like, oh my God, you were just a kid. And like for the first time, I'm seeing myself like as a kid. And it's really, really trippy because, I mean, it's kind of fucked up and sad. Just like the amount of brainwashing I got, and just like realizing that a lot of the things I struggle with now run so very deep. Like they go back so far to 2009. And like, that's only when I started journaling about it. Cause I remember when my parents found out I was like self-harming, they made me see a therapist, and she made me start this journal. So like, I don't even know how long it was going on for before then, but I've been thinking about that. And so it's been like really exhilarating in the sense like, oh my God, I feel like I'm onto something. I need to chase this feeling of like self-compassion, but it's also really exhausting. And I find myself like increasingly wanting to just like check out.
Okay.
And my roommate's gone this weekend. So
yeah.
Well, and I'll be working also.
That's good.
But yeah, I just need to make sure that I like eat during my shift this time because I don't want to set myself up for a binge while my roommate's gone.
Oh, yeah.
That's like a recipe for disaster. But that's kind of where I'm at. I've been doing a lot of writing.
Okay.
And that's good.
Interesting you mentioned some of that stuff about reflection, because like one thing I did, it's because of something that we said last week when we just like gave a brief mention of something that was on the Lauren Goes to the Psych Ward episode. And really, I just wanted to hear that story again because it makes me giggle. So I was like, oh, I'll play that episode. And I was surprised because it has been, you know, at this point, like 2 years, 3 years since that?
2 years.
Okay, because I was going to say it was right after I started with the podcast.
You started in 2022.
So yeah, it's been like 2 years, and it surprised me like hearing the beginning of it, and you know I probably will finish it, but at that point I just turned it off. I was like, that's actually I'm not ready to relive that right now. Like when I talked about like the cops knocking on my door, that was the one that got me. I was like, I forgot how that felt.
Yeah, well, there's a reason that we block these things from our memory. Is because they are so traumatic. And in the moment when you're all like in crisis management mode, you are just going through it, and it's painful once you realize, oh shit, that was something really big that happened to me and I'm going to have to deal with those emotions. It's really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
We had pretty heavy childhoods.
Yeah, as we're finding out.
Which is a great segue into today's topic, which is an extenuation of what we talked about last week. I'm really excited this week to start getting into like our listeners' opinions. I think it'll unlock a lot of experiences, like personal experiences that you and I have had.
Yeah.
So without further ado, we do this every other week. We post a pickle poll on Instagram, and I forgot to do it on Substack this week. Sorry, Substackers. But yeah, we post it on social media, we get answers, and then we talk about it. So this week's question, would you like to, or I have it right in front of me.
Okay.
I don't know why I just want you to panic.
No, I actually had it in front of me too. I could have done it.
We are so, say it with me, professional. Well, all right, you read it then.
Okay. Well, I will. What did you miss out on in childhood and how does it impact your mental health today? So there.
You're being mean.
You were first.
I'm going to tell Mom.
Not if I do first.
I'm going to tell Pico.
Shh. You can't hear these things.
Is he? I can't even see if he's on screen right now. No, he's not.
Yeah. He's slightly on my phone screen.
Pico! We're just hangry, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's play the voicemail first.
Okay.
It is from Orion, Speak of the Devil.
Getting ready. I might have to continue to take notes on my treatment plan.
That's another thing. I have only listened to parts of this. When I downloaded it, I haven't listened to the full thing yet either. So we're actually in the same boat. All right, I'm going to play it.
Okay. I think something I may have missed out on in childhood, due to the religious community that I grew up in, due to the many siblings and the homeschooled environment that I grew up in, where every action was evaluated and policed and punished. I missed out on the opportunity to fail, to get in trouble, to question anything, to have doubts, to have curiosity. I just lived in a world where stuff was fed to me, and any natural curiosity or ideas I had about the world were punished, were shut down. Now I feel like I am a very curious person, and I feel like I'm just having to rediscover that part of me. And that does scare me sometimes. I am afraid of questioning my beliefs or the way the world is around me in a lot of ways, because I still hold that fear that that's not okay to do. And yet, it has been the most healing thing for my mental health to be able to question my own thoughts and my own beliefs, to question the way that people treat me isn't always what I deserve, to kind of see the nuance in the world around you, to be able to hold two truths at once, to be able to hold many truths at once, to realize that there's nuance to everything, to realize that, the world isn't a one-to-one equation, to realize that you can't control the actions of other people is really important for our mental health. And it wasn't an idea that I grew up with, I'm realizing. Everything was told, this is the way it is, this is the way it's going to be, and you just have to live with that. And we really don't, and we can learn, and nobody knows everything. We should be allowed to change our minds and to doubt, and we should be allowed to explore new ideas. And that's that childish curiosity I think we have to rediscover for ourselves when we were deprived of that in our childhood, maybe. I don't know. Does anyone else feel that way?
Yes.
I'm like,
yes? I think we both do.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously can relate a lot, but what are your thoughts?
I was looking at, I'm like, what note do I want to start with that I took? I guess starting backwards, one of the last things that he said about being allowed to change your mind.
Yes.
And how that should be growing up. It made me think, and I'm definitely not going to get into this topic, but because, sadly we're in a very political moment right now. And I
don't want to shy away from politics on this podcast either.
But this is more like an overarching view of politics in general, because you see it every single time there's a major election, that somebody gets just, dragged through the coals and heavily criticized because it's they said this before and then they said this. And that seems to be like the worst sin you can commit in politics, I feel like. And that's never sat well with me because I've always thought, like, we are evolving and we change. People change their minds. It happens. I mean,
that's true. And I think obviously like their actions should speak volumes. Like the people can tell when someone has genuinely changed their views, you know?
Yeah.
Because politics can and do say anything. It's someone's actions that determine who they really are, at least in my opinion.
But yeah, I guess it depends on like usually like what is being attacked for that, because maybe not all the time, because sometimes it does seem like, okay, you're pandering, I get it. But, but a lot of times, yeah, when I see something like that, I just think like, I've changed my mind on bigger things than that. Sometimes you don't know all the facts.
Yeah. I've changed my mind about so many things, and in the next year, I know I will change my mind about so many other things, and that's okay. Like, Ryan was mentioning, like, there was literally no other option than what was taught to us in our case, because I also grew up really religious, homeschooled, all that stuff, authoritarian and all that. And yeah, we weren't allowed to change our minds. We literally would be punished, or we feared being punished. And that is even worse than actually being punished in some cases.
Yeah, I would bet that's more of that, like guilting you into like...
Well, and that's why I didn't consider my experience as traumatic for many years, because like, you know, nothing really, really bad happened physically, even though, you know, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, it was so fucked up, the mind game, just like the mental anguish I went through. I mean, I don't know how many I'll share today, if any, but I have like my journal and like, oh my, it's just, I was totally guilting on myself all the time for not being good enough for God.
Yeah.
And serving him. And like, I would get a crush and write about how guilty I felt because I feel like I'm being distracted by the devil. And it's like, no wonder I can't flirt now. Like, associate like crushes with shame and guilt and literal like stomach aches.
Yeah.
Speaking of things we missed out on in childhood.
And even if you don't believe that now, it's just like, when you felt that for years, it takes more than just, you know, like realizing one day that's not true to suddenly stop feeling those things and stop reacting that way, because bodies get conditioned.
The body keeps the score.
I haven't actually read that yet either.
I've read a few chapters
40 times. Yeah.
It does, though.
And I felt like that was something that you would definitely relate to. And I did note when Orion was talking that I wouldn't necessarily say that I relate in like where he said that he wasn't encouraged to be curious. I don't feel like I was brought up that way, but the very first couple things he said, like that he did not have the opportunity to fail or the opportunity to get in trouble. 110%. Yes.
Talk more about that. What did that look like for you?
It just was...
Or like, what were some situations where you felt like it would have been better to fail? Or you weren't allowed to, or were sheltered from it?
I'm sure there's probably good ones, from like the very young and formative years. But I mean, the first example that came to mind is, so when I was in college, my minor was going to be journalism just because my major was English creative writing. And they told you that's probably what your minor should be. My time in college taught me that I am never going to be a journalist. And I
well, now you kind of are. Kind of, not really.
Well, okay. A media that didn't exist when I was in college is okay. But when it was going to be only, you know, like basically print media and you have to interview people.
That's how it was at my school too. And I didn't like it. It was all like TV production, like live TV. I was like, I hate this.
Yeah, I wasn't interested in it being TV, and which was, you know, there was some of that going on. A lot of it was still print, especially like features and magazines was a big thing. And yeah, none of that I learned was going to be me. But it did take me my entire college career where I tried to force it. And I managed to scrape by in the first few journalism classes. And then there was one that I think there was so much just basically like putting yourself out there, inserting yourself where people probably don't want you to be, because it's like, you know, everyone blocks their privacy as, you know, like, don't write about me. I don't want to talk. And, you know, having like the personality to get it anyways, that is not me at all. And it was a class that was like kind of all about that. So I failed it. I did not tell my parents then, because I thought that I still had 2 more semesters before I graduate and I could take it again. I took it again the last semester possible. I failed it again.
No. Did you tell your parents then?
And that's when I had to. And I realized, like, I didn't tell them the first time. I didn't tell them the second time when I knew full well that I was going to fail it. I didn't tell because then, it was supposed to be my last year at college and I was living in a house with 2 other girls. So we had rented it all through August. So even though I was supposedly done with school, I stayed in the house till the end of the year. It wasn't till they were going to come and move me out that I was like, so I gotta tell you something. I didn't exactly graduate.
How old were you?
21, 22, 22.
Wow.
Yeah. But I figured it out, later, especially like because they get mad at you again, of course. Like, why didn't you tell us? When I'm thinking through it, I'm like, it's because I was totally terrified. I was not raised to believe I was in a position where I could call my parents and say I failed a class. So I did everything not to have to tell them that.
That's sad because, I'll say something good about my parents for once. They've never shamed us for failing anything. They have been very supportive when, I've changed my majors. I changed schools 3 times. I've moved all over the place and, every decision, and not just me, my siblings. All of my siblings have pretty wild lives.
Yeah. I've heard some of them, yes.
Non-linear paths. We'll just say that. None of my siblings have had very linear life journeys. And my parents have just rolled with the punches, supporting us along the way as best they can in the way they know how, And I'm really grateful for that. I can't even read my own handwriting. I wrote opportunity to fail / something.
I wrote opportunity to fail / get in trouble, if you wrote the same thing.
I think that's what it is. Oh, but I wanted to talk about the importance of curiosity.
Yeah.
Because, I wasn't really allowed to be curious either. I mean,
I guess I was in some ways and not in others when I think about it.
Yeah. I couldn't be curious about sex, for instance. We talked with Janai about sex on the podcast a few episodes ago. It's very uncomfortable.
It's a good one.
It's a really good one. I listen to it when I need dopamine. We're so
uncomfortable.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
But I wasn't allowed to be curious about that. And even now, still, I find myself being afraid to Google random questions I have because I'm afraid of I don't know what. I think someone's going to...
Well, now it's because people can find your search history and it's you create...
Yeah.
But still, I'm saying that, that's part of why, but also it is the amount that you got kind of brainwashed into it because it's someone can see my search history and my parents might just walk into my house when I'm not here and say, I want to see Christina's search history. Why is she Googling sex?
Okay, but things have happened like that before to me. And so you can never be too careful. That's another thing I missed out on in childhood is just feeling like I could ask questions.
I agree with that.
I feel like I'm always having to hide things. Even now, you can see if you're watching the video that my door is behind me, and that makes me very, very uncomfortable. It doesn't close all the way, so I have to move the cat couch in front of it when my roommate's here because I'm just so afraid of her walking in behind me, even if I have nothing to hide.
Mm-hmm. But here, when you're distracted, then it'd be you're not prepared if it happened for some reason.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I just feel like I'm always on guard, and that is a result of the things we're talking about today. But yeah, doubt is okay. Doubt is healthy.
Uh-oh. Just kind of went, Ew.
Oh, what about now?
Now you're frozen.
Oh, you've frozen several times.
What do I do when Christina is frozen? Look like an idiot.
Oh no, dear.
No. Come back. Help, help, help.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, hold on. I have to start my video again because I stopped it. My camera's really hot.
Yeah, I wondered how that was going to work. I kept my video going and was an absolute moron in front of it.
Oh, can't wait to see that. Did you have any more thoughts about Orion's voicemail?
I think I hit them all, which is good because that was kind of a disruption.
Yeah, we have some technical difficulty. It wouldn't be pickles and vodka without that. I don't know if that's something we want to brag about.
Not necessarily our fault. It's connection issues.
We're getting a storm.
Oh.
A storm's brewing.
We're going to in, I don't know, an hour or so too, so.
But let's move on to the comments.
Yep.
Oh, I have to open Facebook too, because I think we got one on Facebook.
Oh.
So we reached out to our private community for some of these answers. And so big thank you in advance to all those people. Do you want to read the first one?
Sure. I'm just going to say it's also nice because sometimes when you're taking Peach answers, I don't remember everybody's usernames because they change them all the time. But now that I'm seeing them as well and see their icons, I'm like, oh, good. I know every single person who responded.
Nice.
Oh, do any of them not want their name read?
No one told me they didn't want their name read. I did say, if you don't want your name read, let me know.
Okay. So the first one is from Jill, which quite simply says, what if you missed out on childhood generally?
Yes, we actually got a few comments like that.
I saw that.
Yeah, Ina says, I just missed out on the whole thing. What's childhood?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
You don't know what to say because, like, you can't get that back.
I was going to say, like, maybe you would have more experience with answering that question just because, as we just talked about, you had a few extra ways that you were kind of, prevented from thinking for yourself as a kid and things like that. But at the same time, I was like, well, I might understand knowing this person as well because, I mean, my main reason for feeling like I missed out is because all of the stuff with my sister.
Yeah, your sister died really young, for those who don't know.
And she was she never had more than the mental capacity of, like, a very young baby.
Yeah, she was severely disabled.
So she needed a lot of care. So yeah, that's what I feel like. 'Cause it's like my parents had to spend all their time on her. I wasn't allowed to do things because she never could be left alone, and we didn't have any money, really, so they couldn't, like, be hiring a nurse for her or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a lot of responsibility on my parents. And then she died when I was 10, too. So we got just lots of awkward family stuff growing up, which made you grow up fast.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we should talk about, like, what even is an ideal childhood? Like, I don't really know what a normal childhood is supposed to look like.
No, and there are ways that I would actually say, like, at least in my opinion, I'm like, mine was kind of ideal in a few ways. It wasn't all doom and gloom.
Exactly. I mean, yes, I was the oldest of 7 and I had to raise, I had to be a secondary mom, essentially. And we were homeschooled. And so I was responsible for a lot of my own education and some of my siblings' educations, like parts of it. And where was I going with that? The body keeps the score. The body keeps the score. Oh, yeah. But with all that said, I feel like being homeschooled made it even easier to be a kid in some ways. Like, we would spend all day, like, running through the woods, creating, like, imaginary kingdoms. We would role play all the time and create these elaborate, like, fantasies. And, like, I wrote my first chapter book when I was 11.
Yeah.
Like, we did a lot of creative stuff. And like I was saying earlier, we didn't do a lot of, like, math or science. So, like, I still am very behind in that. Like, Orion was talking about missing out on opportunities. Like, I don't know. But also, yeah, my childhood was very imaginative. And I feel like I'm such a creative person now because I did have a lot of opportunities to explore that in some really non-conventional ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agreed. I was like, yes, there's some ways that I was, basically pressed into being an adult very early. I mean, like I said, if my sister died when I was 10, then I had to be 9 years old the first time my mom just kind of had an emergency and is like, I need to leave and there's no one to watch you guys. You don't have to just watch yourself. You have to, watch this special needs child.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Yeah. And, so, there's things like that. And I'm also, like, just as we were talking, was reminded of something that my mom mentioned, which I realized, like, oh, yeah, that's true, is also, because we had no money and because we had my sister, my mom couldn't really leave the house when I was little. She's like, there were days where I couldn't get out. I couldn't really, have friends and do things. She's like, and your sister is not talking or anything. So she's like, my company was you. My company was like a 4 or 5 year old child. That was like my only friend for the bulk of that time. And I mean, I feel really bad for her having to say that, but also for me having to be like the confidant for a grown ass adult because I'm all that's there.
Yeah, that should absolutely not have been put on your shoulders that young.
Yeah.
That goes without saying, but like, I'm going to say it anyway. Because we need all the validation we can get.
But at the same time, that's what I was thinking is I also think of being a kid and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do stuff, like me and my best friend in elementary school went to her brother's Little League games. And I remember, like counting out because their snack counters went down to, it was like 1 cent for a Tootsie Roll. So if we had $1, we'd work with it. Like, I want, like this for 20 cents and this for these 2 things for 10. And I've got 8 cents left. So I want 8 Tootsie Rolls.
I started zoning out when you started using numbers.
Sorry. But I was thinking of that. And I was also thinking in elementary school, I had a friend who, every summer, as soon as it got warm, their parents would just set up their camper year round. So, they'd take it vacationing, but in the meantime, it's just parked set up in their driveway. And I'm like, yeah, my friend and I would say like, oh, it's a nice night. We're going to sleep in the camper. And then, of course, we can sneak out and we can walk around. It's my little town when nothing's going to happen. But, it was just us being crazy-ass stupid kids.
Man, yeah, those are the experiences I always wanted, but never got.
Aww.
Just like sneaking around, getting in trouble with my friends. Like, I never got in trouble, ever, because I guess I felt like I couldn't. Not because I would like get in trouble with my parents, but because I thought it was like a sin.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like that is a good segue into some of these other comments. Okay, I'll read next. I missed out on the unconditional love of a parent, as mine did not want me to exist, and were then offended at what my existence turned out to be, queer. I missed out on the innocence of the childhood purity our culture told me to cling to, as adults who were supposed to protect me ripped that chance from me violently and regularly. I missed out on the magical childhood freedom from responsibility, as when I wasn't taking care of adults trying to kill themselves directly or indirectly, I minded their children. I missed out on coming to my own knowledge of my emotions, as I had to dedicate all those neurons to reading the emotions of others in order to keep myself and cousins safe. That's a heavy one.
That is.
And thank you for sharing that. I know it's hard for you to talk about feelings too. I'm joking because it's serious, obviously. But yeah, I can really relate to from having to take care of adults or having to take care of kids. Like, my mom's talked about it on the podcast before. Otherwise, I wouldn't mention it. But she struggled with drug addiction when I was young. And I did have some times where I had to like take care of her or the other kids. And it was really scary. And I think like I blocked a lot of it out of my memory. But it turns out you don't really have any spoons left after dealing with that, to process your emotions. I don't know. Did you have any thoughts?
I know. I was looking over it again. I mean, I mostly was just agreeing to you, just like that sentence at the end. It's like I have to dedicate all my neurons to reading the emotions of others. That it's like, yeah, it's a sad thing, but it's just kids having to grow up too fast because you don't have an option. I mean, it sounds like in this situation, you don't have an option to even like stand up and say, actually, I think you've told me this, but it's this. It's almost like a fight or flight all the time.
Well, yeah, that kind of thing does, as they put it, kind of rip that childhood purity away from you. And which I have thoughts on that too. Like, do you think childhood is supposed to be inherently pure? Or what do you what does that mean to you? Because that's a loaded word for us, as we've discussed.
Because I was going to say, when I think of that, then the first thing I think of is having purity forced on you, like we've talked about already. And it sounds like, no, kids should be allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, last week we were talking about the stages of development that you're supposed to go through. But like, if you're forced to skip some of those stages as a kid, then you have usually a lot of problems later on.
Yeah. It's kind of like they say, like about feelings in general, where it's like, oh, if you bottle them up, I've always heard they come out sideways. And it's kind of like, if you skip over a stage, it's going to force itself out.
I guess the reason I'm struggling to relate is because I feel like because I was so sheltered, I stayed innocent for too long.
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm innocent now, to be honest, in some ways.
I feel like that continues to get better, but occasionally I still get it too. I still get that feeling.
Yeah. I guess the other thing that jumped out at me was parents being offended by them being queer.
Yes.
That's another thing that makes me really sad when I read these old journals. I can see the tiniest little hints that I was queer, but I didn't know about it, first of all. We weren't even taught about it, and it was a sin. You know, it wasn't even on the table. And so I really wish I had been able to explore that, earlier in my life. Like, it took me 30 years.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now.
Okay.
We should read the rest of these comments.
Okay.
Why don't you read Mia's?
All right. Kind of a different answer. Already fucked it up. Kind of a different answer, but spirituality. I was raised an atheist, and while in many ways I think that was really good for me, it also meant I had to deal with death, existentialism really young, like 6. I had a friend of my grandparents die right in front of me around then, and I think not having any framework to process what happens when you die, where you go when you're no longer in your body, etc., was really challenging. I had a lot of issues sleeping for a while because I'd be up thinking about death. I wish I had been given more of a way to think of it than that's it, or at least a few more years of childhood before I started having an existential crisis.
Oh my God.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, even though I was raised a Christian, I had the same existentialism when I realized I could go to hell.
Yep.
And probably around that same age.
Mm-hmm.
I was regularly traumatized by youth groups who would talk about, you have to witness to your friends or they're going to go to hell and it's going to be your fault. Like, that's heavy. And I can't, I mean, also, Mia, the stuff that you talked about, like having to deal with death and existentialism, staying up late, thinking about death, that happens to me now.
Yes, me
like,
too.
I can't imagine going through that at 6.
Well, I was going to say, maybe not quite that young, but pretty close. When I started to realize as well, it also, that kind of thing would happen to me. And it was similar to you because I felt like, depending who I talked to, also raised in a religious household, but maybe not as strict, which meant that, like, maybe my parents are at a certain level in religion, but they're sending me to a Catholic school, which also has a different level, and different family members maybe take it more casually, and some are really, really serious. So I was getting all different things told to me. So that's what I remember as first thinking, I really don't know how good you have to be to get to heaven. Like, I know I haven't done anything terrible like kill a person, but I don't know what's enough. So I was also had that fear. And I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. That's why I said probably around 8 or 9. I think that is when, for a good chunk of years, when I blew out the candles on my birthday cake, that was always my wish, was I wish I go to heaven. And I felt like that had to be the wish every year, or else it might not happen.
I was superstitious too, like that. Like I had to say goodnight, sweet Jesus.
Oh man.
3 times. Wow, I forgot about that.
Pickles and vodka, unearthing more childhood trauma.
God, I want to cut it out, but I won't. Maybe my sister will hear it and laugh because she had to say the same thing.
Oh man.
Anyway, the next one is from... What is happening? Is Pico okay?
Yes. Pico,
oh my
honey.
God.
Baby.
Is he done?
I mean, you can ask him. I can't.
Pico, are you done? Okay. So this person goes by, it's me, coffee. This person says, not sure quite how to phrase this, but I think an avenue for expressing my true emotions, meaning they missed out on an avenue for expressing their true emotions.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. As a child, I had a sense that I needed to be the put-together one of my siblings and never felt I truly had an opportunity to discuss my actual feelings / mental health state with anyone. It never felt okay to not be okay. I've been fortunate enough to get in therapy and find social support circles that have helped me be more comfortable with expressing deeper emotions. But even still, I struggle talking to any of my family members about this, and I feel like we will always have this wall between us where real emotions can't be discussed. Even with the professional and social support I've received, I still feel like a failure for not being put together.
Ouch.
Oh my God.
Right.
Triggered. I'm just kidding. That is real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we both obviously can relate quite strongly to this. You literally had to be put together because they were depending on you for so many things.
And thinking more recently, I feel like this is things that we've talked about some in recent weeks where I'm just like, yeah, I've said how even if with like mental health things, I do still struggle today just because it's not as bad as when it was super obvious to my parents that I let them believe like, you're all better now. I'm like, well, on some days, but I don't tell them that. I let them think like, yeah, I want to disavow the whole idea. Like, ouch.
Well, and so you just don't talk about any of that stuff. You don't talk about anything real because that would mean being vulnerable and letting them know. And I don't know. It's not that I think my parents would be disappointed if I told them I failed at something, but like I said, it's the fear of it and the shame of it that keeps me from saying anything. I mean, this person was talking about, yeah, I still struggle talking to any of my family members about this, and I feel like we'll always have this wall between us where real emotions can't be discussed. That hit the hardest for me.
Same. I was just going to say, as soon as they mentioned the wall that you can't cross with emotions, I was like, you hit this hard.
Exactly. Like, I've literally journaled about this recently where I just have been like with my family, for instance, and I do feel like there's a wall between us.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be a wall I've created, but it's still there. Like, that doesn't make it less real if it's in my head. Like, It's fucked. And I feel really lonely and misunderstood a lot of the time, just even though I don't have to.
Yeah.
My sister was over here earlier. She swung by to eat a sandwich after she got off work, and we were talking kind of about this, and she was saying I feel like I'm always like finding new ways for me to struggle. Like, I feel weird if I'm not struggling because that's natural for us.
Yeah,
we're like being kind of in crisis management mode, like we were talking about earlier. I'm paraphrasing, of course. The ADHD is bad right now, I gotta say. It's a miracle we've made it this far. We do this for you, listener.
Yeah.
Because we love you. And because we're all kids who just want friends. Okay, are there any others? Oh, do you want to read Gulf Coast Toads?
There's 2 responses. Trick-or-treating and Christmas. I was so jealous of my friends who got candy and presents. I'm a big holiday girl now. And then also, it said, I relate to a lot of what you share about religious trauma. I felt so lost and behind when I went to college because there were all these common experiences people could bond over that I couldn't relate to. It definitely leads to me becoming overly dependent on a couple friends who were nice to me, and it was really difficult to unlearn that and start fostering healthy boundaries in a relationship.
I just got done literally reading the journal entries when I went to college.
Yeah.
And how scary that was. Like, I was so excited about it because I was finally getting away from my family and like, leaving the past behind me, as I so naively wrote. But I soon realized that there was a wall between me and the other students. Like, I was an outsider. I was...
Pico! Sorry.
It's okay.
Come here, buddy. Come up here. You'll stop that.
My room got so dark. It says more light required.
Uh-oh. Better hurry our asses up. Mine will get to that point too.
Okay. It's been a while. This has been some really good discussions.
Yeah.
But one more thing that they said was being overly dependent on a couple of friends who are nice to me. I never really had like long-term friends as a kid. Like, we didn't get a lot of social exposure as homeschoolers, and I did have a few friends, but like we moved around a lot. And now as an adult, like I really struggle to make, I don't know. I feel like I've been overly dependent on the friends that I do have in the past.
I was going to say, I'm not sure if it's from a similar place, but I definitely understood that and felt that friendships were always kind of weird and kind of awkward for me and did, sometimes get disrupted, like you said. So I totally agreed with that. Like, I feel like I make a couple friends and I don't necessarily ask for help, but I do, like, internally, I need them to be everything. That's what I feel like.
That's another thing, asking for help. I never learned how to do that as a kid. I prayed about it.
Yeah, clearly I didn't either.
Yeah, and that's pickles and vodka. Thank you so much to everyone who wrote in or sent voicemails. Stay tuned next week to hear what our new topic will be. And
here is the majestic non-floof.
The majestic fuzz.
He cut all his floof off, so he can't even pretend to be.
Okay, it's weird though, because he actually looks floofier now than he did before. Like, it looks softer.
Oh, it's definitely softer.
So I think that counts.
Okay.
Pico, you are a majestic floof.
Aw.
Truce.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you next week, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. If you like what you heard, don't forget to tell a friend about our podcast. You can direct them to picklesandvodka.substack.com, where they can find our entire archive and also get access to our chat. We're on Instagram at Pickles and Vodka Podcast, Facebook.com/Pickles and Vodka Podcast, and YouTube.com/@Pickles and Vodka Podcast. My Instagram is @XtinaJumper, and Lauren is @LaurenAFH. We'll see you next week.